What's going on, YouTube? Maximal Rides here. Welcome to my YouTube channel. And for my first video, I decided to put out a review, an owner's review of the FXDR 114. And I figured what better place to do it than to bring it out here to the Devil's Whip in North Carolina. The Devil's Whip is 10 miles long, and if I'm not mistaken, over 160 curves. So I figured this would be the best spot to bring the FXDR and give you guys a good idea of what it's really like. Let me start by saying it was a 2.5 hour ride from my house to get here. So for all you naysayers out there, you can't go past an hour, you're pushing it, you can't go over an hour, it's a niche bike, and so on and so forth. It's not. I made it here. I made the ride, the 2.5 hour ride. I made it just fine. I wasn't in any major pain that I could say I have to get off of this bike. If you want to count the fact that I pulled over to put gas in the bike to make sure I had enough fuel to have fun out here, then I guess you can count that as a stop. So let's get some of the specs out of the way, some of the nitty-gritty, I guess you could say. It's 114 cubic inch, which translates to somewhere between 1800 to 1900 cc's, somewhere in there. It's a 2019 model year. Harley claims 119 foot-pounds of torque, and as we all know, or as a lot of us know, Harley Davidson doesn't post their horsepower figures on their website. So with that being said, I'm just gonna go off the dynos that I've seen, and because they can be fairly controversial as to conditions and humidity and so on and so forth, I'm just gonna go off on a whim, and I'm gonna say that the bike produces somewhere between 80 to 90 horsepower, somewhere in there. So other things we know, it's got an inverter front end, dual disc brakes in the front, monoshock rear with an aluminum rear swing arm. So let's address an elephant in the room here, which is that 240 rear tire. I'm not gonna sit here and say that, oh, you really can't tell, but it's really not that bad. Leaning it over into the corners is really not that bad. It does it almost with pleasure, I must say. I don't find myself trying really hard to get this bike to lean over. The bike feels absolutely phenomenal through the corners, very planted. Although I'm not going very fast right now, not yet. I do intend to show you some of the capabilities of this motorcycle. So many of you may wonder, what did I ride before that gives me the impression that this FXDR is so awesome? So why don't I give you guys a bit of a background as to where I started and how I ended up at the FXDR. So I learned how to ride when I was about 8 to 10 years old. I really couldn't reach the ground, and I learned how to ride on my uncle's Super Cub 70 back in Dominican Republic. And then by the age of somewhere, I'd say 14 or 15, I ended up with a CBZ 125, which was a great bike, but I didn't get to ride it too much because it stayed in Dominican Republic and I was living in New York. And then fast forward a couple of years, and I got a CBR 600 RR, and that was a great bike. I ended up putting about 9,000 miles on that motorcycle before I traded in and got a CBR 1000 RR, 2009 model year. And then fast forward a couple of years from there, a series of unfortunate events, and I no longer had that bike. Then I was without a motorcycle for about 3 to 4 years, and I ended up getting a Honda 919, which was a great bike. I loved it. It was very comfortable, decent for long distances. And during my ownership of the 919, I ended up getting a Harley Davidson Lowrider S with a 110 cubic inch engine. And I liked it so much that I barely rode. I like the lowrider so much that I barely rode my Honda 919. And then fast forward a year or two, and then it was time to move. So we moved from New York to Charlotte, North Carolina. At which point I ended up selling the 919 and keeping the Harley Davidson. And then Harley made the mistake. They made the ultimate mistake of releasing this motorcycle. And I thought to myself, the bike looks fantastic, but I haven't seen it in person, so I don't know how much I'm gonna like it. So I went in and I test rode it, and I thought it felt really, really nice, although I wasn't too sure about the taco position that the motorcycle puts you in. But the same is also true from when I sat on a Harley Davidson Sportster 48. And the same was also true when I sat on the Night Rod Special. So the taco position on Harley motorcycles is nothing new. Is it uncomfortable? It can be, but once you get used to it, it's really not that bad. That's a good spot to pull over. So that's kind of my background. I always rode Hondas. Pretty much all my life I rode Hondas, and I was into sport bikes for a very long time. I'd say over 10 years in total. So I'm going to give you guys my immediate impressions of the motorcycle through the corners. Here we go. Motorcycle just absolutely powers out of corners, powers out of them. Don't really have to struggle too much to lean it into the corner. The torque is impressive. The amount of torque that this bike puts out is absolutely impressive and addictive. And the brakes are absolutely phenomenal. Phenomenal braking. Left to right transition on this bike is actually quite nice, especially when you consider the fact that it's got a 240 rear tire. Ooh, I scraped. Like I said, this torque is absolutely addictive. This bike just pulls and pulls out of these corners like we're not even going uphill. Little S curves. This bike is absolutely fantastic. For all of you naysayers out there, I gotta say, try it out, man. For real. When I first saw it, I didn't think it was going to be all that great, but let me tell you, this bike is absolutely a blast to ride through these mountain roads. There's a spot with gravel coming up somewhere. Make sure I keep track of that, but the only real gripe that I have is that picking up your behind, and switching positions is quite cumbersome because of the forward controls, which is another gripe that I have. But I guess they say practice makes progress, so if you just practice shifting your weight from side to side on this bike, it's really not that bad. Takes a little more effort, but gravel section should be coming up. There it is. Careful, careful. Ooh, ooh. Oh, first gear corner, and we'll blast out of this one. Hard on the brakes for this one. Second gear corner. And here are the switchbacks of the Devil's Whip. Can only imagine this is part of the reason why it got its name. Ooh, cars are cutting close. First, ooh, this is a tight corner. My goodness. Power! Woo! Feel the torque of this thing. And we're at the top. Alright everybody, so here are my final thoughts. Realized after I left the Devil's Whip that I never actually did this. So we pulled over at this gas station and I decided to give you guys my final thoughts. The bike was amazing. It handled great. The Michelin Scorch 11 tires were absolutely phenomenal. They had excellent grip. For the limitations of the bike, it had excellent grip. Not once did I have any inclination that I was losing grip or that I was pushing it way too hard. It took us 2.5 hours, and I say us, by the way, shout out to my wife. She rode her Iron 1200 all the way from Charlotte to the Devil's Whip, 2.5 hours to get there, plus the time that we rode out there. And now we're on the way back home, another 2.5 hours to get back. So shout out to her. That big props. That's a bike. Yeah, that's nice, right? Yeah, boy. Yeah, buddy. So as you can see, I do have the windshield on my FXDR, and it does help a lot. It does help tremendously, as a matter of fact. And I don't believe it detracts from the look of the motorcycle. I think it actually looks really nice with it on it. Maybe on an upfront view, not so much, but on a side profile, you can see that it actually looks quite nice on the motorcycle. Again, I can't stress enough. If you really like the way that the motorcycle looks, give it a shot. I'm telling you, it's not as uncomfortable as people say it is. I've definitely been riding it. For goodness sake, it took me 2.5 hours to get to the Devil's Whip, plus the ride time at the Devil's Whip, and then the 2.5 hours to get back home. So you can easily say that I've probably been on this bike for about, I'm going to be, by the end of this, a total of almost 8 hours on this motorcycle. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I can continue to ride for today. I am going to be a little beat up by the time I get home, but it's not something that I'm going to sit here and tell you tomorrow I'm going to wake up so beat up that I'm not going to want to ride. Most likely tomorrow I'm going to get up and I'm going to go for a ride. Which reminds me, tomorrow being Father's Day, happy Father's Day to all you fathers out there. Or happy late Father's Day by the time this video comes out. And that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed my video. You know, like the video, subscribe, or give me a thumbs up. Tell your friends about it, tell your moms about it, tell your cousin, tell your sister, tell your brother, tell everybody and their mama. Let everybody know there's a FXDR review out there by Maximo Rides, and hopefully it's enjoyable. You like my content. So thank you so much for watching, and enjoy.